I knew before he finished the sentence. That's the part I keep coming back to. Not what Garrett said. Not even what Lena screamed from somewhere behind him in the background. But the fact that I had already felt it coming the way you feel weather. Something in the air for months. A coolness that had nothing to do with season. Don't come for Christmas. 5 words. He said them evenly, like he'd practiced. Or like he'd convinced himself they were reasonable. Maybe both. I didn't respond right away. I listened to the silence after them. And then Lena's voice came through sharp and certain. Only real family belongs here. Not you, I said. All right, that was all. I didn't perform calmness. I just didn't have anything else to say that would have been true in that moment. And I've spent enough of my life saying things that weren't quite true in order to keep a room comfortable. I made tea afterward, sat at my kitchen table, looked at the window above the sink that needs recaulking, and thought about how long I'd been meaning to fix it. The apartment came to mind 3 days later, not as a weapon. I want to be honest about that, because it's easy to rewrite your own motives once things have moved. It came to mind the way an old receipt comes to mind, when someone tells you a purchase never happened, 6 months, $400 a month, which was what the unit rented for, which was what I did not charge my son and his wife when their lease collapsed, and they needed somewhere to land. I called it family. I made up the guest room and bought an extra set of towels, and didn't want to say you're welcome, because I didn't think I needed to. I sent the invoice on a Tuesday morning. No note attached, just the math. Garrett called 11 times before noon. I watched the phone and let it ring and felt something I can only describe as tired. Not angry, not satisfied, just tired in the specific way of someone who has been carrying something heavy for a long time and has finally simply set it down. Lena's voicemails were something else. The first one was disbelief, the second was louder. By the fourth, she was explaining to me with great patience that family doesn't charge family, and I sat with the irony of that for a moment before I deleted them. They came on Christmas Eve. I saw them through the window before I opened the door. Garrett in his good coat, Lena with her arms crossed against the cold, and Oliver and June in matching red wool, 4 and 7 years old, standing on my porch looking at the wreath I'd hung the week before. June was pointing at it. Oliver was explaining something to her with great authority the way older siblings do. I opened the door. I didn't look at Lena. I crouched down and I held those 2 children and I breathed them in. That specific warmth that children have, the realness of them, and something in my chest moved in a way I hadn't prepared for. Then I stood. I looked at Garrett not with anger, more the way you look at someone you've known so long, you can see all their ages at once. The boy he was, the man he became, the gap between those 2 things. I told them I wanted to see Oliver and June regularly, that I'd spoken to a family attorney 2 weeks prior about establishing something clear and documented, not custody, just consistency, just a guarantee that whatever happened between adults wouldn't be used to manage my access to my grandchildren. He looked like I'd said something in a language he didn't recognize. Lena said my name once in a tone I chose not to respond to. The children came inside. I had cookies on the counter and June found them immediately because June always finds things. Oliver sat at the kitchen table and told me about a book he was reading very seriously, pausing to make sure I was following the plot. By 8 June was asleep on the couch. I got the blanket from the hall closet, the one my own mother made, the one that has no business still being in one piece, and I covered her with it and sat nearby in the lamplight, while the adults existed carefully in the kitchen, not quite arguing, not quite reconciling. The invoice is still outstanding. The relationship is still unresolved. Garrett left without saying much, and Lena left without saying goodbye. And I stood at the door and watched their car back out of the driveway. Then I went back inside. June was still sleeping. I sat beside her and listened to her breathe, and didn't try to make it mean more than it meant. It was enough. It wasn't enough. Most true things aren't one or the other.